one-stop shop for wrestling talk. We're talking champs v contenders, rookies v vets, and shoots v works. I am your host, the Triple Crown Champ. Let's get into it. Welcome back, guys. And it's been so long. Full disclosure, your champ has had some technical issues on this channel. Oh, heavens, God, no. On WrestleMania weekend? Your king was able to calmly rectify the problem. I'm done, bro. I'm done. What the actual Your king took great pride in being able to resolve a problem and gives you the utmost guarantee that such a thing will never happen again. WrestleMania Night 2. Let's go. So we start off with the first match of the night, which was Io Shirai, Io Sky versus Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair. Now, what did I think of this match? I think it's unfortunate that over the whole 2 WrestleMania nights, it has been classed as something of a failure when there were matches such as Io, Bianca versus Rhea. I think the match was exceptional. I think there are good problems. There are problems there, but they are all very good problems. They are great problems to have. I think one of the issues is I remember Rhea Ripley from the very beginning. I've said before that I've been a fan of Io Sky. I've been a fan of Bianca Belair. Big fans of both of those wrestlers. However, I am also a fan of Rhea Ripley because I have watched Rhea Ripley and I've watched her progression. I remember the Rhea Ripley before all of the goth makeup. I remember Rhea Ripley before Motion in Black. I remember simply a young girl with a touch of an Australian accent that was in NXT UK. Now, the character evolved somewhat and I watched every evolution of that character. But you have to remember, Rhea Ripley, the way she's built, she's not naturally like that. She isn't that big. It's the work she's done to achieve more muscle mass. She is a strong girl. She is bigger than most of the girls in the roster, and that showed throughout NXT UK and throughout NXT. That is a part of her character, making her dominant. However, that becomes a problem when you have a character like Bianca, who I don't think the WWE banked on having. She came through at a different point from Rhea. There's not too much difference, but there are probably about 3 or 4 years difference between when Bianca became signed to the Performance Center versus Rhea Ripley, as they said before, being in Japan, then coming to NXT Performance Center, and then being sent out to NXT UK. So because of that, I think there's a problem when you bill Rhea as heavily dominant because of her strength, and then she comes into contact with someone like Bianca, who is she's billed as strong, but she's billed as strong because she is strong. She is dominantly strong, considerably so by the looks of it than Rhea, which is it's a good problem to have. She's an excellent athlete. She's great at what she does, but she is clearly more dominant than Rhea is. And that's problematic when the character is mommy, the matriarchal dominance kind of character. I do think they work well in the ring together, though. Every time Rhea comes up against Bianca, I think it's glaringly obvious that it's a mismatch in power and strength. Bianca clearly dominates her heavily, but then you still have to tell a story, and I think in that there's still a fairly good story to tell. So as far as the first match goes, I thought it was wonderfully done. I thought it was very well timed. Everybody looked great in the match. get well soon to Bianca, because I understand she broke some fingers in that match. But everybody performed exceptionally well in that match. Um, and I have more respect for Rhea. I didn't think I could have more respect for Rhea, but I have more respect for Rhea after that match and the way she sold and she put over and a true team player. You look for that across the WWE roster, and I will say I'm liking the female locker room at the moment for that because they all seem to work well, and I think that is a part of the reason why Charlotte stood out, because I don't think Charlotte is necessarily a team player. And with all the team players that you do have in the locker room working together, having such a camaraderie that it very much seems to shine on camera, despite the fact they want to or not. But it's a beautiful thing. So that first match I thought was an absolute lovely match. It was beautiful. It was well timed. It was well paced. There was interesting moves. They still managed to tell the story, a great story of the champion being the underdog and realizing that the other two competitors at the end of the match, if you looked on both of their faces, it told a story of, maybe we shouldn't have underestimated the champ, which was brilliant storytelling. So I think that went exceptionally well. So let's move on to the Sin City Street fight between Damian Priest and one of my favorites, Drew McIntyre. Now, I've always said that I'd like Drew McIntyre. I love Drew McIntyre's work. Not necessarily the biggest fan of Damian Priest. However, when I predicted this match, I did predict that Damian Priest would win this match. It would seem now, everything we know, well over a week later, that this looks like it's going to be a best of three. And I think that's actually a good idea because as soon as the match was ended, I wrote on my pad, um, unexpected. That's why I wrote just one word, unexpected. And I understand why now I wrote just one word, unexpected, because the mind sometimes knows that there's something more going on. There's something you can't see, but you might not be sharp enough in the moment to pick up on what you're seeing. It was the best of three. It was the best of three. So I believe we're going all the way to SummerSlam for this one, with Damian Priest and Drew Mac. I think Drew McIntyre is going to lose this one. So I think the next match they have, which is probably at Backlash, I think Drew McIntyre is definitely going to lose that one. Yeah, he has to lose that one. And then we will do some more promotion, of which Drew McIntyre will dominate again. Drew McIntyre will dominate him again, over and over again, until the night of the match, in which Damian Priest will come out as the victor, because quite frankly, Damian Priest needs more push. I am not sure about his character. I'm sure about his ability to work in the ring. I'm sure about his ability to get over. What I'm not sure about is the gimmick. Maybe it's just me, I don't like it. I enjoyed the whole Terror Twins moment because that gave me something to root for him a little bit more. I kind of liked the idea of the Terror Twins, a guy and a girl. They're not actually related, but their bond is so close together and they're so dominant. That was a lovely storyline, and I wish they experimented with that a little bit more. A little bit difficult considering the fact they split them up between the two brands, but I did like the Terror Twins idea, and I think it helps Damian Priest get over more with the fans, which I think he desperately needs a little bit more of, especially if he is going to be someone who stands in the title picture, because sometimes it feels like Damian Priest is being forced upon us. That is my personal opinion. You may feel different. Again, the comment section is there for exactly this. But yeah, I think maybe he needs a little bit more work on that character. Not necessarily the character, but just the gimmick. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't think it fits him. which is weird. Maybe it is actually his personality. I don't know, but I just don't like the gimmick. So for that, but I still call that this feud will end with Damian Priest as the winner. So let's move on now. So let's move on to one of the matches of the night that I absolutely loved, and it gave me a surprise, especially because I did not call the winner, although I did in the past call aspects to this match. We are, of course, talking about Bron Breakker, Finn Balor, Dom Dom, and Penta. Now, well, this match was always going to be chaotic. It has absolutely great performers in it. I knew Penta and Finn Balor together were going to be able to carry this match to a level unprecedented, as well as the fact that Dom Dom would be able to assist with the storytelling of this match. So I looked very much looked forward to this match, and it didn't disappoint because I like a twist, I like a turn, and I like a surprise. The twist and turn and surprise that I thought we were going to get is not exactly what we got. What we got was not a victory. What we got was not a victory for Bron Breakker, as I predicted, but in fact was a victory for Dom Dom, which I did not predict. I predict Dom Dom would lose the match. However, it would lead to a feud with Finn Balor, which I believe is very much happening. I definitely think that's next. Finn Balor and Dom. But that's going to take a while, and I will go into later why I think that's going to take a while. But as far as that match goes, I figured that Finn would be the one pinned, and Finn was one pinned. I figured Finn would be the one pinned, and he'd be pinned because of a mistake made by Dom, or a betrayal by Dom that didn't pay off, to which Bron Breakker was going to capitalize. My prediction of that was because I believe that Bron Breakker was ready for a main event push. He was going to be in a main event match capacity, or a faction, or something of that light that brings him one step higher out of the intercontinental picture and into the world or the universal title picture. That was my prediction. However, I figured that would take some months to generate. The same time, Finn Balor and Dom would have their storyline. However, Penta and Braun would have their storyline, and at some point, Penta would pick up the belt off of Braun. I didn't think Braun would drop the title this quickly, and I thought it would take some time to get Braun ready for the main event picture. I believe I gave the example of Drew McIntyre coming up from NXT and aligning himself with, was it Dolph Ziggler he aligned himself with for a long time, and you knew eventually he was going to turn on Dolph Ziggler and decimate Dolph Ziggler and then go for a title run. This is much the same as I thought with Bron Breakker, but I didn't know who. We now know who, but again, I will save some of that talk for another video. So let's move on to Logan Paul versus AJ Styles. Now, Logan Paul versus AJ Styles was one that I predicted pretty easily. As I said before, I don't think the WWE have always respected the level of talent that they have in AJ Styles. He truly is phenomenal. By the way, I understand that I say the word phenomenal a lot. Maybe you should play a drinking game. But the phenomenal one, AJ Styles, has been such for a considerable amount of time. As I said before, I don't necessarily watch a lot of TNA anymore. Although saying that, I did watch Rebellion like last night. But I don't watch a whole lot of TNA anymore. But I was religious to TNA when there was a six-sided ring, and sometimes after when there was a six-sided ring. I believe I tapped out around about the time of the dissolution of Aces and Eight. I just couldn't. The story, it was going downhill, and I found it hard to be loyal anymore. Now I look at TNA and it looks like something completely different. It looks like an indie promotion. I believe I've said that before. Not like a proper wrestling promotion or company. But I mean, that's okay. They have Joe Hendry, and I believe in Joe Hendry. So, as I was saying, I got sidetracked. Logan Paul and AJ Styles, yeah, didn't respect the level of talent that they have in AJ Styles. AJ Styles has been the truth. TNA is the house that AJ Styles built. I think despite the disrespect in kayfabe, what we're getting here is something that's actually quite beautiful in regards to the business as a whole. I think we're looking at the old guard co-signing the new generation. As far as eras go, I believe this is how the business evolves. This is how it moves from generation to generation, era to era, and this is why I say it's something beautiful. What AJ Styles is doing is obviously putting Logan Paul over, despite how we feel about Logan Paul. As I've said before, having a music that calls him humble when he is anything but. I think he's smart enough to realize the way people see him or view him, at least from being this internet sensation online. We have to remember that he is not necessarily a kid anymore. He is a grown man at this point, making avenues in his life as grown men do. So perhaps he has evolved as a young man. Into being a little bit something more, and we're not fortunate enough to see that in the same way, because we remember the kid that went to Japan and disrespected the whole country and all the YouTube and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is, he clearly works extremely hard. He has thought this character through fairly well, and he plays it extremely well. The only thing I have to say about Logan Paul, quite frankly, is uh, does Brock Lesnar get any residuals? Or the pulverizer is pretty much the F5. It's pretty much the F5. I know some of you might not see it. I see it. It's a fancy flip or toss into a DDT. Come on, let's be real. But it looks awesome. That is an awesome finisher. Well thought out. Never seen it anywhere before. Kudos to him. AJ Styles, Logan Paul. Yeah, I always thought it would be a fantastic match. And it was a fairly good match. It really was. It had its twists and turns. I always thought that Logan Paul was going to win, though, as I said before, as I've said many times. It's the older generation putting the new generation through. So, yeah. If this is the last time we see AJ Styles at WrestleMania, thank you, AJ Styles. You have been on my Mount Rushmore list ever since I saw you in TNA. So, let's move on to the surprise match of the night, which was Randy Orton versus Joe Hendry. Now, as I said earlier on, I believe in Joe Hendry. I really do. Joe Hendry, I'm a big fan. I don't know why. It's really cheesy, and it caught me just in that sweet spot of, kayfabe and having a laugh of wrestling, and so I'm a big fan of Joe Hendry. Love to see him work, and I had a feeling, because I'd watched Rebellion, as I said. Not Rebellion, the pay-per-view before Rebellion, I forget what the name is now, where Joe had to defend his belt in a triple threat. Now, I understand that the last pay-per-view he also defended his belt in a triple threat. Um, but yeah, I watched that and realized that the whole event was being hosted in Las Vegas. So there was a strong possibility that he stayed in Las Vegas after that. I mean, he could have also gone and come back, but the events were so close together that it would make sense to have Joe Hendry. Also, the fact that Joe Hendry had competed on WWE television, on NXT TV, prior to that, not long before, I think it was at the Royal Rumble, he had a match for. He had a match for someone. I can't remember if it was for the title if it was for the NXT title and he lost. But he had a match. Yeah, I think it was against Ethan Page. In any case, the affiliation between TNA and WWE, we all know about that at this point. So there was a strong possibility that it would be Joe Hendry. Other than that, I thought it, as we all thought, it could be Nick Aldis. However, they just didn't promote the Nick Aldis angle. You have to understand that. In the weeks before WrestleMania, even after Randy gave the RKO to Nick Aldis, there was no promotion of it. There was no kind of, which only left Joe Hendry. The match was a little short. I'm sure they didn't have that much time to work through it. Um, I thought he put Randy over a little bit too easily. And maybe that wasn't his choice. Maybe that was creative's choice. But he is still world champion. So I think I've always found that a little bit problematic between WWE and either the recognition of other promotions or the fact that someone can show up on the WWE roster because they've been acquired by another company. They were a world champion in that company, and WWE seemingly doesn't recognize that that person held a title in another promotion purely to kind of promote their own promotion. I understand it. I don't generally like it because I think if someone, this is the wrestling business as a whole, it's not the WWE business. So if a competitor wins a world title in another promotion, maybe we should have some level of respect for that, is what I thought. So I felt like Joe was defeated a little bit easily than he should have been. But I guess, as I said, they probably didn't have a lot of time to work the match. It was a last minute replacement. I hear a story that Randy had a short list of people to pick from and he picked Joe Hendry. So maybe all of that's right. They didn't have time to work through the match all that well. And they've never worked together before. So you don't quite know. So there is that kind of thing. But altogether, seeing Joe Hendry, the pop, having him come to the ring, you know, say his name when he appears and singing along and waving your hands, it was all just really enjoyable. So altogether, all right, I enjoyed it, yeah. Loved to see Joe Hendry. Loved to see Randy. Didn't like 2 RKOs. That was a bit much. Come on, he's still a world champion again. And we will believe in Joe Hendry. So, what is left but the extremely controversial main event? So, what do I think of this match? I think the match was better than people claimed it was. I think the spots towards the end of the match is what really has everybody in an uproar. And I just want to say one thing. Here's the thing. As a fan of the WWE, a lifelong fan of the WWE, like I'm sure many people are, and some of those people are celebrities, if you were given the opportunity, I'm talking to you, if you were given the opportunity to be in the show of WrestleMania, would you say no? I think that's an easy enough one. I don't care if I'm an internet YouTuber or the Oscar winner or the 5-time Grammy Award winner. If somebody says you can be in the show at WrestleMania, I am going to take that opportunity. Whether it's just to say hi and wave or to take a bump from Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Undertaker. Yeah, I'd take a chokeslam from The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Yes. If you had that opportunity, you wouldn't say no. So maybe like pull back on the harshness on Travis Scott. Like I'm sure the creative angle that wasn't his idea to do that. Somebody pitched it to him, and he heard you can be in the show at WrestleMania. He didn't hear you're going to be in this match, and you know what? If you think about it, You don't belong in the match. It doesn't make sense you be in there. It's not like you were an advocate for The Rock or something like that. The Rock was the one that should have showed up, but you don't hear that. You hear, I can be in the show at WrestleMania. And he took it. I blame whoever's in the back office who thought it was a good idea to bring Travis Scott out for a reason none of us can really explain. You're not a wrestler. That belt you hold is not a real belt. What? I don't get the angle. You're not an advocate for The Rock. The Rock's not there. Like, we as fans get it, but I don't think it's Travis Scott's fault for that. As I said, back management, bookers, whoever is to blame for that, but it's not Travis Scott. Um, as for The Rock, I think The Rock is his own man, and he can be wherever he wants to be. Um, we as fans don't deserve to dictate where and when The Rock should show up on Raw, WrestleMania, or whatever the event is. I understand that it was integral to the story. It would have been helpful, at the very least, I will say. Um, and ironically, I say this as someone who has never been a Rock fan. And I mean never. I am loyal to my wrestlers, and I picked Triple H a long time ago. So, never quite been a Rock fan, but I still don't think that means people should dictate where and when The Rock should be showing up at events. I think that's his own choice, and I think he's been in the business long enough to know when he should or should not show up. And I think he also chose poorly in this respect, because the fact of the matter is the storyline needed him to show up for all the reasons you've heard of many people saying, um, because he was integral to the story. He started off the story, the soul, the idea of the soul. Come on, that's a ridiculous storyline for wrestling. But we had such performers around it that they gave it gravitas. And the idea of selling your soul to the final boss who's on the board of directors, this was the biggest event of the year. It deserved an appearance. Now, there's a lot of talk about infighting backstage. Obviously, we don't like to hear that. Um, Especially considering the fact that I think Triple H has done amazing things for the business. I look at NXT and I remember there was a period of time, black and gold period. Some of you know what I'm talking about. Black and gold. I do love black and gold. The black and gold period of NXT where I just didn't even bother with the main roster. Obviously, I knew who the stars were. I knew them from before. I, there's a few influxes here and there, but I didn't even bother with the main roster. I just watched NXT. That was it. And that just so happens to be the period of time that Triple H was in charge of NXT. And it's one of the reasons I advocate for a lot of the wrestlers who have come up from NXT and are now on the main roster. And I say to some of the people that don't understand why people like Johnny Gargano, and I'm getting sidetracked, but you understand what I mean. So for Triple H to lose control over the main roster, I don't think it's a good idea, because I don't think I've ever seen another, whatever he does, I forget exactly what his exact title is, but I haven't seen someone at the helm of a WWE ship that was better. I don't think Vince was better. I don't think Stephanie was better. I don't think Shane was. I just. And as far as wrestling lore goes, Russo is a man I do not appreciate. So all of those ages, I just think Triple H has been the best I've ever seen at it. As for Cody losing the belt, I didn't see Cody losing the belt. I knew it was a possibility, because it's always good to have a villain heel of that level on the roster. Um, Especially with what John Cena could do with it. But I didn't think they would take the title off of a face like Cody, Although, as I said, I did think it was a possibility, and the reason I thought it was a possibility was because he has been working since last WrestleMania, since the WrestleMania before, so consistently on the roster, not much time off. So he needs a break. Physically, his body needs a break. You don't run yourself into the ground like that. So 2 years, one of which he held the title for the entire year, it makes sense for him to drop the title. And work with what John Cena has, this whole retirement idea, of which he can do brilliant things with it, because I think he'll probably become a face again just before the run ends. As for The Rock, I mean, I don't want to be nasty and mean. The reason why is purely because I don't like him already, so I feel like I would just be piling on. But probably should have been there. Let's just say it that way. Probably should have been there. And I don't blame Travis Scott. Aside from that, I don't think the whole WrestleMania weekend was a dud. Not at all. I thought it was very entertaining. There were some really special matches on the card. There were some surprise matches on the card. So, all in all, I thought it was a good weekend. And that was my full review. Finally, I apologize for the late upload. I apologize for the audio. We have received some technical difficulties of epic proportions on this channel recently, but we're working through it, and we will be up and running at full strength very soon. And until then, I have been your Triple Crown champ. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.